Yeah. Okay, well, we've had a very wide-ranging discussion, and our time is almost up. So I wanted to ask each panelist to sort of maybe draw things together with just one suggestion, one quick suggestion that they would like to see to be the priority for policymakers in the next 12 to 24 months if we're really going to move towards more inclusive infrastructure. And I'm going to start with you, Elisabeth. What do you think overall we should really be focusing on? Is there one big outstanding pressing challenge that you would like to see addressed in the next 24 months?
Sorry for that. Yeah, so I think we have already, let's say, the framework in place in many aspects. So that inclusiveness is really a policy objective, which is even to be found in hard legislation. So I think in the next 24 months, what is the challenge really to make this work? That means to see with all those who then implement this legislation that we come in practice also to inclusive projects, and which have then in the end really inclusive effects. And that means that the whole chain from starting making, the planning for the funding at all levels, EU level, national level, regional level, local level, in a way that is inclusive from the start, and also when judging which projects you select, that this is taken into account. And so, for example, on local level, we have the sustainable urban mobility plans and so on. And that means really to go down into the practicalities and see that that's really happening on the ground, what we have, let's say, set as an overall objective. And I can only say from our daily work to prepare this guidance, to work with all the stakeholders on that, that is partly very nitty-gritty, but in the end, very rewarding and worth the effort, because otherwise we think we will not achieve to have this deployed also across all the member states in the EU. So really look at what we have already in the rules and see that this is applied in practice with well-trained staff.
Great. Philippe, one priority for us.
So if you, a recent experience has been, I've been working on the Grand Paris Express, and if you compare the Grand Paris Express case to Crossrail in UK, for instance, you realize that once again, social objectives are set by public authorities, and these authorities have a very good understanding. There's no problem of asymmetric information between the regulator and the firm in charge of providing the service. Big concerns are more on the costs of production, renegotiation. These costs can be huge if there are important asymmetric information. So overall, I would say that on the cost side of infrastructure project, it's important to use good incentive contracts. On the social sides of the project, public authorities and government have a good understanding of what should be done, and this can be easily written in a contract, and the objective can be imposed to the firm in charge of proposing the service.
Nicolas, one priority for you.
I would actually have three. I would say good regulation and good governance, as was also mentioned during this discussion, but it was discussed at length during this panel. The second is standards. We need good standards. In fact, there is an increasing appetite from particularly the financial industry to invest in this kind of infrastructure assets, especially if you take institutional investors. They would like to invest in this kind of infrastructure assets that are inclusive, that are green, but we are lacking good standards. The EU is working on that. There is the green taxonomy. The industry is coming up with its own ESG standards, but we are not yet there, especially in the infrastructure area. So
and the S is behind the E in that sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And the third aspect, which was, I think, also alluded during the discussion, is data. We need good data, and when it comes to infrastructure, we don't have enough data, and most often policymakers are actually flying in the dark when it comes to infrastructure.
Sébastien.
Yes, as my colleagues, I would say planification, governance for sure, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, perhaps a social pricing opening in my industry at least. And my last wish would be concerning the low emission zone deployments. As you probably know, it is a typically French drama, I would say, because low emission zone deployment is very sensitive in France, whereas it was deployed for many years in some other European countries. And I think that there is a risk, as we are talking about inclusion and infrastructure, but there's a risk with low emission zone deployment is that it could lead to very simple, even simplistic measures as banning some vehicles and so peoples from the core of the city, and so closing access for them to the city for cultural services, economic services, and administrative services. So I would like that, especially in France, this topic of low emission zone deployment will be seen with, as it was the case, for example, I have in mind in Germany or Spain, with a perhaps a more complex approach, but I think more relevant. For example, keeping for these people some very reduced rights to access, but not zero. For example, once a week or once or twice a month, just to enable these people not to be I would say excluded from the core of the city, because the city is I would say the place to be, the place to live, and to meet people. So I think it is a key aspect of our actuality. And as you probably have in mind, in France, the things are not so well started as we saw in the press.
Yeah, those emission zones are also a political issue in Britain. So for a moment they were the Conservatives' big hope for getting back in by opposing the low emission zones.
And I say it will be probably more complex, but things are already on pure technically on consideration. We can do that as we did for example. It's just a question of deploying systems of control of right accesses. We do it for on-street payment parking. So it could be simple to extend this kind of skills and expertise to this new stake, probably.
Great. Jérôme, one quick idea from you.
I may have three. Number one, invest in more public servants in the capacity to deal with the energy transition. There is lack of competence in the local authority. It was said 2 weeks ago by Patrick Pouyanné at the French Senate. It's absolutely essential. We are waiting 3 years to get a capacity to plug a PV solar system. My second element is having European community looking to what is done in Chile regarding private initiative. Private initiative is a good tool for innovation. We need to have more innovation in concession. And so look to the regulation which is present right now in Chile, which is helping private initiative to grow a solution with an advantage to the guy which is proposing, and which is something which is very important. And the last element, which is an infrastructure we are not speaking of, but which is the one we are using every day, is public street. Public street, there is a problem in public street, in social acceptance of public street, which is security. And I would like that, in particular, Europe reopen the way that data privacy is dealt with the capacity of using IA in order to protect people who are scared to come at night in their own public street. And so technology are there. It's a question of governance in order to be able to make public street safer again. And we have in some cities the map of streets which are not usable anymore in France at night, and it is increasing. So it's a fear that we need to take.
Great, and I'll give the last word to you, Sara.
Oh, thanks. It's a lot of pressure to have the last word, but I guess the last word I will say is to echo something that Elisabeth said a few minutes ago, data. And maybe I'll expand on that by saying that there are enormously rich and enormously useful big data sets that are coming online now about individual mobility, cell phone ping data, for instance, and sort of very detailed data sets in particular cities about car travel and bus travel, et cetera. And for both academics, consultants, people who work in governments to sort of tackle these data sets and glean lessons from them, and to understand distributional effects of policies and so forth, I think is enormously important. And I would love to see more of that going forward to help inform these policies.
Great. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the panel very much and hand back to Gwenola. Thank you.